run!
No, let go of me, please!
You're not staying here, move!
I can't! You're hurting me!
Oh, this is One more step, now!
Stop! I won't go!
Why is she here? She was supposed to be dead. The whispers rippled through the church the moment the doors creaked open. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as the woman he'd buried in his past, the wife he'd pushed into the river, stepped inside, dripping in silence and truth. Marissa's smile vanished. Guests rose from their seats, stunned, terrified, confused. Imara didn't rush. She strolled deliberately, every step echoing like judgment. Daniel's skin turned pale, as if the world had caught him mid-crime. This is the story of a man who tried to erase a woman and watched her return. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Before everything collapsed into scandal, whispers and trembling guilt, his life had seemed perfectly controlled. Daniel Whitmore was the son of a respected businessman, raised in a wealthy riverside estate where rules were silent, expectations were inherited, and appearances mattered more than truth. His marriage to Amara, a warm-spirited black schoolteacher, had shocked his social circle from the moment he first introduced her. She brought life into spaces that had been cold for years, softening the rigid corners of his world with her laughter, her devotion, and her belief that love could bridge anything. They lived in a small stone cottage near the river, separated from his family's mansion by more than distance. For 2 years, they built a life together. Quiet dinners, shared dreams, long evenings when Amara graded her students' papers, while Daniel pretended to read, watching her with a softness that once felt genuine. To her, their marriage was a sanctuary. To him, it had become a source of growing pressure as his family's disapproval hardened into threats, and his own insecurities twisted into resentment. He never shared how deeply the judgment around him cut, how friends whispered that he had thrown away his legacy, how his mother refused to speak Amara's name, how business partners raised their eyebrows, hinting he could do better. Amara knew pieces of it, but not the full weight. She only saw the changes in him slowly surfacing. The long silences, the late nights, the cold distance, the way he avoided looking at her when she spoke about their future. Yet, even in those quiet shifts, she held hope. She believed love could still reach him if she remained patient enough, kind enough, understanding enough. The river near their home became her refuge, its gentle currents offering calm when Daniel no longer did. But beneath that calm surface, trouble was rising. The kind that begins with subtle cracks, an ignored message, a hidden secret, a lingering unfamiliar perfume, and grows into something far darker. A storm was gathering around their fragile marriage, one that Amara sensed without fully seeing. And Daniel, drifting toward a dangerous temptation, was about to make a decision that would shatter everything. The shift began quietly, so quietly that Amara didn't recognize it as the beginning of the end. Daniel started returning home later than usual, claiming business dinners or urgent meetings. His phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, now stayed face down, locked and tucked into his jacket. He smiled less. He touched her less. He spoke only when necessary, offering clipped answers that left more questions hanging in the air than she dared to ask. Through it all, Amara tried to understand. She told herself it was stress, a rough season at work, a phase. But deep down, she felt the distance growing like a shadow creeping across their home. And though she didn't know the source, she knew he was slipping away from her. In truth, Daniel had found comfort in someone who fed his fears rather than challenged them. Marissa, a woman from his family's social circle, was everything the world expected him to choose. Wealthy, white, polished, and eager to assure him he deserved better. Their connection began as a casual conversation at a fundraising event, but quickly morphed into something far more dangerous. Marissa knew exactly which insecurities to play on, and Daniel, craving approval, leaned into her validation like a lifeline. He began seeing her in secret. One meeting became 2, then weekly afternoons in hidden cafes, where Marissa spoke of a future he had once believed impossible. One free of judgment, where no one questioned his choices. She whispered promises of acceptance, status, and a life unmarred by scandal. And Daniel, blinded by the comfort of old expectations, started to believe her. Amara sensed the betrayal before she could prove it. The unfamiliar perfume lingered on his coat, the coldness in his eyes, the way he avoided her touch as though guilt burned beneath his skin. But she held on to hope, praying he would speak truth before the unspoken tore them apart. Then one evening, the storm she feared finally broke. Daniel returned home angry, at himself, at his family, at the tangled knot of choices he'd made. But instead of confronting his guilt, he redirected it toward Amara. He snapped at her, accusing her of suffocating him, of never understanding what he risked by being with her. The words cut deeper than any knife, revealing the resentment he had buried beneath years of pressure. Amara stood frozen, tears stinging her eyes, unable to recognize the man raging before her. This wasn't the husband she loved. This was someone molded by fear and poisoned by the voices around him. In the days that followed, Daniel made a choice that would spiral into something unthinkable. A choice fueled by desperation, pride, and Marissa's relentless pushing. She whispered that their future required cleansing the past. As long as Amara lived, Daniel would never be free. One night he asked Amara to walk with him by the river, claiming he wanted to talk, really talk. She agreed, eager for any chance to save their marriage. As they walked along the moonlit bank, she didn't notice how tense he was. How his jaw clenched with every step, how his eyes kept drifting toward the dark water. She didn't know that this walk, this simple act of hope, would lead to the most devastating moment of her life. And Daniel, trembling with the weight of his decision, knew there was no turning back. The river was quieter than usual that night, its surface smooth and dark, reflecting only the pale sliver of moon above. Amara walked beside Daniel with cautious hope, believing this was finally the moment he would open up to her. She spoke softly about rebuilding, about fighting for what they once had. But Daniel barely heard her. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, louder than the current, more audible than his conscience. They reached a narrow bend where the river curved sharply, its waters deeper and faster. Daniel stopped walking. Amara turned toward him, searching his eyes for warmth she no longer recognized. Instead, she found a coldness that sent a tremor through her spine. Before she could speak, he stepped closer, too close, and the shift in his posture made her chest tighten. A breath, a hesitation, and then, with a sudden force driven by fear and manipulated conviction, he pushed her. Her body plunged into the icy water, the shock stealing her voice before she could scream. The current grabbed her immediately, pulling her beneath, spinning her in a violent rush that swallowed every breath. Panic clawed through her as she fought to resurface, but the river was strong, stronger than she had ever imagined. Above, Daniel watched her disappear, his face pale and trembling. For a moment he seemed frozen, horrified not by what might happen to her, but by what he had become. The river carried her away, out of sight, leaving only ripples where she once stood. It should have been the end, but destiny. Resilience and truth had other plans, dear audience. Where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Amara's survival was nothing short of a miracle. The river that tried to claim her instead delivered her downstream, where tangled roots broke the current just enough for her battered body to catch hold. Bruised, freezing, and gasping for breath, she pulled herself onto the muddy bank. In that moment, half alive, half broken, she understood the truth. Daniel hadn't stumbled. He hadn't slipped. He had pushed her with intention, and the man she had loved, defended, and believed in had chosen a world without her in it. But Amara did not die. And she did not disappear. Nursed back to health by a traveling fisherman who found her at dawn, she kept silent about her identity. Not out of fear, but strategy. She needed time to gather strength, to gather proof, and to gather the courage to walk back into the life that had tried to erase her. Each day as she healed, she replayed the moment at the river, his eyes, his hands, the cold finality of his decision. And with every memory, her resolve hardened. Weeks later, on the morning Daniel stood at the altar beside Marissa, smiling as though he had finally cleansed the life he wanted to forget. Amara walked into the church, alive, steady, unbroken. Gasps echoed. Whispers exploded, and Daniel's face drained of all color as his past marched toward him. Her presence shattered the illusion he had built. His new marriage crumbled before it began, and the truth, raw, painful, undeniable, rose like a verdict. Because no matter how deeply prejudice and betrayal try to bury someone, truth has a way of resurfacing. And so the question lingers long after her steps echo through that church. How many more lives will be pushed aside, silenced or discarded before the world finally learns to choose justice over hate? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories.